There's a hex on the whole thing. Okay. So okay, now I need, it's like I forgot how to do this. Um we have like a slightly different setup, just that I have my Cintiq tablet here. And by Cintiq I mean Huion, my Chinese knockoff of Cintiq. Um Also, another thing I need to do is this. And slate. There we go. And that'll allow me to sync the chat with the video, since I'm going to just record the whole movie and everything, and that'll make it just a little easier on the other end, just for other things I plan on doing with it. Also, Rachel's not here, so she was like, record the experience. So we'll try. Um, let's see. So Wolfwalkers. So we're leaving anime for a little bit. um, I've always wanted to kind of go more international. I kind of just wanted like anime to be like the 2020 season or 2021 season. But there's just so much anime to go through. There's so much good things in anime. I'm gonna try to go through, different, go as international as possible. Not all internet. I feel like Japan has a really good hit rate for quality animation, and I feel like not every other like high art attempt at animation is necessarily as good. Like, I Lost My Body, that got like a lot of praise a while ago. It's great as an animated work, but it's I can teach you everything that's in that with Wolfwalkers, so it's like I don't know. I don't know what to do with that, right? Um Also, it's really hard for me to just keep up with everything. So we're really just going with either what I've seen that seems good, and what um what I've heard is good. And this year I'm kind of going more freeform, not necessarily planning out the whole year. I'm just kind of going, okay, well, what would be the next thing to talk about that's related to what we're going over? And this is not necessarily related to Fully Cooley, but there is a big part of what we talked about in terms of how character design is used, that was brought up with Fully Cooley, and so we'll go into that. But with Wolfwalkers, it's Irish history, and the Irish history is very deep into what this film is. Hold on, I donated my hair recently, and now my hair is all. That's just gonna bug me. Anyway, it's in shock and has not recovered. Anyway, so uh, anyways, Wolfwalkers is a lot like Wolf Children. In that Wolf Children, like we're talking about, it's a cute film that's high key about crimes against humanity throughout history. And in Wolf Children, we talked about how about the Japanese genocide against the Ainu people. Um, and sort of the use of symbolism as the wolves representing a group of people. Specifically in Japan, Hokkaido is where the Ainu live, but there were also a population of wolves in Hokkaido, and or what is now Hokkaido. And the around the same time that there was an ordered kind of there was an ordered genocide against the Ainu, there was also an ordered extinction of the wolves. And so Wolf Children takes this idea that basically conflates the two and tells a story about ethnocide, and the weight of the Japanese mother who has to sort of raise these mixed race children when their connection to their culture has been severed because they're carrying the weight of this generational trauma. Wolfwalkers is a little more like grounded in like actually the individual politics of it. Um, Mamaru Hosoda tends to focus very much on the individual person. Cartoon Saloon tends to be very much focused on style and character. They're known just for making just beautiful films, and so with this, it's less about like the necessarily the individual experience. Although we do get this experience where Robin is an Englishman coming in to Ireland because her dad works for the occupational forces of Ireland, or not of Ireland, but in working in Ireland. And so she comes in with this very English perspective of what they're doing there, and she gets this rude awakening in the first act when the when she says things that to her are objectively true. She's like, well, my dad works for the Lord Protector, and that makes him great. And then it's like a bunch of Irish kids are like, fuck the Lord Protector and fuck your dad. And then she's like, I don't understand how you can have this worldview. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then she starts to realize, like, as she gets into contact with Meva, that you know, what does it mean to be asked to hunt and eliminate the wolves? The wolves being a stand-in for the Celts. So let's go a little bit into the Irish history. It was very much a huge tunnel of data, and same thing with Fully Cooley. I've just been constantly going into a lot of where I need to learn and get better just to cover the basic premise of the movie. And so I hope I get it right, because it was a lot of data, and there's also a lot of summaries of Irish history tend to be very reductive and tend to be like, well, they're Protestant and they're Catholic, and you can't put two of them together or they'll fight each other. And I'm like, that's fucking dumb. Like, as a Palestinian, like, the narrative of just, oh, two religions, they can't share the same room, wacky doacky. Like, that's just the dumbest fucking interpretation of any political event ever. It's very reductive. It's very, like, colonizer history, right? It's very much like a colonizer's idea of it. And so I kind of kept going through and trying to be like, okay, well, Protestants and Catholics live in the US all the time. They're not bombing each other, right? So what's happening here? Because it's not fundamentally religion. And so that's an issue with this, because it's like, I really hate these kind of colonizer narratives that were sold, and that's just the basic summary. And as a writer, the official story is often just very shitty, like, well, what was happening? And long story short, basically landlords. But I mean, I would like to summarize it like that for my own political biases, but actually it's more so than that. The British really decided that the Irish just won't have wealth. And so a thing to understand is that our base, like, from an American perspective, our idea of what is the white identity came after the American Civil War. So it was basically, slaves are freed, but now who do we oppress? And they really had to think about it, because they were like, well, it's definitely going to be black people, but how do we create a system of rules so we don't get caught up in it, right? And so that's kind of the creation of the white identity, is it's like, well, we don't want, someone finding out they're from country A, country B, whatever. So they're just like, okay, well, white. white people, everything is fine for white people, and everyone else can fucking suffer. And and it's also, fun fact, this era is where Arabs are still considered white on the census, because Arabs said, we don't want that to happen to us, so can we get in on this white thing? And it was around the time of like Edgar Allan Poe, and people were like, hey, Middle Eastern shit is tight, so yeah, you can get in on this, because it was basically like saying, you know, it was basically like the Japanese saying, we want to be considered white, and then weebs going, yes, 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 this, I want this now, right? So basically, our concept of white is centuries after Wolfwalkers takes place. And it's also centuries after all this colonizer bullshit happens. And if you look at how the British thought of the Irish, they thought of them like you can basically copy and paste all ethnic slurs for everybody, and they kind of overlap. There's no like distinguishing features typically of different racist, like colonizer logic of different races, right? They're just like, they're all savages, they don't know how to be, they're wild, they need our culture. And a lot of this is because this is kind of how like Orientalist writers have kind of gone through writing nonfiction and justifying, colonization, because they're paid to kind of go out and justify colonizing a place, and so they need to make up these rules. And they're just like, oh, they're not using the land, they're savages, they're wild, they don't know what they're doing, they need to be tamed. And so it's like, basically everything you can say that the English said about the Irish, you can say that the American settlers said about natives. You can have the Israelis say this about the Palestinians, right? And so then you get to this area where people are basically like, land isn't even being used. There aren't even actually people there, right? So let's go to like the very early Irish history. So you have the Celts who are living in Ireland, right? And they have their own oral quote unquote prehistory. Some people call it a pseudo history, because the way cosmology is recorded through oral traditions, usually it's through stories and through fables and folklore, and so that doesn't gel well with our modern empiricist ideas of history. So the other problem too is that these oral histories, we have them through Christian scholars writing them down. And so they are all secondary sources, and we don't have primary sources. So we don't actually know what is bullshit, what is not, what is bias, what isn't. And so let me see. And I went largely off notes for like 5 minutes. Now I need to find out where. So anyway, the original Irish history is largely lost, or corrupted or questionable, right? And then Saint Patrick came to Ireland and drove out the snakes, and by snakes they mean the pagans, and by driving them out they mean converted them. And by convert, can be seen as, and I mean, I'm of the opinion that it is a genocide. But if you come from a colonizer perspective, they did them a favor, right? But this is a genocide of a culture. It's or more aptly, the word is ethnocide, which is where the people are still kept alive. However, their way of life is either destroyed, banned, punished, regulated, or replaced by something else. and the and let's see. Fun fact: the and by fun fact I mean kind of awful fact of something we have pretty regularly in normal life is that, or modern life is, the shamrock was actually used as a tool to teach the Trinity, how something can be three things but one. But you know, but for Celtic people, they see this as a symbol of genocide and the loss of their way of life. Let's see. There is something in Wolfwalkers where it alludes to a deal between the pagans and Saint Patrick for not tearing down their territories. I could not, for the life of me, find out what this meant. Anyway, so then what we have in Wolfwalkers is three groups of people. We have the Wolfwalkers, who are the Celts, or the pagans, and then we have the Townies, who are the converted Irish. So these would be the Catholic Irish. And then you have the English, the Protestant English, who are occupying the town. Let's see. And so yeah, so we have the Wolfwalkers who have maintained their culture now for 1300 years after St. Patrick had arrived. St. Patrick is nowhere near the chronology of Wolfwalkers. Wolfwalkers takes place in 1650 in Kilkenny, and these are very important dates and a very important location, and not just because Cartoon Saloon is based in Kilkenny. So in 1650, Ireland is conquered by Oliver Cromwell, who is arguably in this movie or not in this movie. It's hard to tell because it's. I'll get into that. And so to understand where we're at in this film, you have to go back a couple of decades. Let's see. So basically, the Irish were considered undesirables. And so the British conspired to have a state of perpetual poverty in Ireland and decide that Ireland is going to be a colony to the British, to the English, and so then the English would be basically vacuuming up resources away from Ireland. They would put in and throughout this time, the Irish were like, fuck you, we don't want to, lose all our wealth to some foreigner and get nothing back, right? And so they would revolt pretty regularly. And so the British thought, okay, well, what if we suppress them? And that doesn't typically go well. But one of the ways that they suppress them is to put in Protestant landlords. They would basically, with military force, confiscate lands, then give them to Protestant landlords and say, well, if and by Protestant, I basically mean Church of England, Englishmen. And so they basically gave away wealth and resources to their own people and denied access to the Irish. But they also did give back some of the land. They gave back about 20% of the land to Irish who could speak English and who basically were not uppity. And so you actually got a ruling class of Ireland who was loyal to King Charles, even though King Charles basically was robbing them blind. And then that would become a problem because then so then you have the English Civil War, and basically King Charles has been running the country without Parliament, and Parliament was like, fuck you, we're Parliament. And so they decided to have a war over this. And King Charles, however, had the support of Ireland and Scotland because he was of royal blood from both Scotland and Ireland. So they call it was the unified crown. And so they supported him. Uh, and so because of that, then Oliver Cromwell was, on behalf of the Parliament, pushed back the Scots. And then after that war, there was still, and then they like killed King Charles the First, and then King Charles the Second had like support for being reinstated as king instead of having Parliament. And because Ireland supported King Charles's son, King Charles II, then Parliament decided you need to go and fuck up Ireland. So it was like, not only was so Ireland got kind of screwed over in both sides of the deal. It was either support a guy who's robbing you, but then by supporting the guy who's robbing you, it was either support a guy who's robbing you, or have no say in how government operates. And but by supporting the guy who's actually going to maybe give you some say while he's robbing you, then you're going to be killed by the people who think you should have no say. And that's basically what happened. Was Oliver Cromwell, after defeating the Scots, then was sent to Ireland to basically suppress and control. And he did, because he is an effective military leader in that he won a lot of war. Like he conquested very well. But he was also a war criminal as fuck, and he committed massacres after massacres with a military tactic that was, if you commit more war crimes, it will scare everybody, and so then you'll kill fewer people. And so therefore war crimes is a more, justified way of going about things. And of course, that is not how the world works at all. That is the worst military strategy, because then you cannot occupy people you've committed atrocities against. Because they're like, fuck this guy. This guy's the worst. You'll never win over somebody whom you've committed a war crime against. At least not for like generations of normalcy. And even then, they may carry that sort of resentment. And so, let's see. And so, yeah, so actually by committing these war crimes, he's sparked more rebellions against him. And so at 1650, when Wolfwalkers takes place, Ireland has fallen to Cromwell's, conquests. And so we have Robin's father, whose job is to be an occupying force under Oliver Cromwell. And Oliver Cromwell, if you even Google the word Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell's name comes up. He's probably the most famous person to have that title. It is just a title of a government overseer at the time. I don't know if they still use it. But he is famously known as the Lord Protector. So there's one bit of, well, either A, the Lord Protector in Wolfwalkers is not Oliver Cromwell. But that seems weird because it's 1650 and Oliver Cromwell has just taken over that territory and is charged with occupying it. Or they just went with a slight anachronism, because it's not until 1651 that he gains the title of Lord Protector. But also, spoiler alert, he kind of implied dies. So this may be a revised history. It's really hard to tell because they don't specifically name him as Cromwell. So we don't know whether this is another Lord Protector or what have you. but also Cromwell. There is a bit of an ironic ending to this film when you compare it to the actual history of Ireland. Um, let's see. All right. I'm actually going through this pretty quick. It's only like 30 minutes in. We started late, and I'm already like nearly done with notes. Although the other part of this is pretty heavy. Um, oh, I'm done with the history part. But anyway, there's I thought I put a different section in here. But anyway, so the just sort of additional history by putting in uh, by basically robbing Catholics of their land and then putting in king loyalists or putting in loyal, like basically Englishmen to run this area. They basically not only stole all the resources, they stole the farming, um, they and took the land and basically created an economic system in which the Catholics were not actually able to really compete. Um, and all of this happened in Northern Ireland, and so um, that's why Northern Ireland tends to vote to remain in the UK. So you have two different political parties, which is the Republicans, which are not the American Republicans. They are Republicans, as in they support an Irish republic. And then you have the Unionists, who are not pro union. They want to join into the UK. And so you've had history, like centuries of politics affected by this move to basically give most of the land of Northern Ireland to Englishmen, because basically that's why you have more Protestants in the north than you have in the south, um, and that creates sort of wealth inequalities, different cultures, different allegiances politically, and so then a couple of hundred years from Wolfwalkers, we have the potato famine, which is not at all based on an inability to have food. It was a completely economic problem. The Catholics were living off of potatoes because they were cheap and they grew in shitty soil, but they were unreliable as a crop. Um, the Meanwhile, steak and other crops were being grown in Northern Ireland, and that was being sent to England. These were all being exported, and the wealth of that exports was not going to the Catholic residents. It was only going to the Protestants. So you kind of get like this have and have not, but also like, you have so centuries after Wolfwalkers, we have basically this deadly event that kills 40% of the Irish population, simply because of economics of colonialism, because they had the food, but the food had to be was allocated to go to the colonizers rather than stay in the colony. And so then you have up till the 90s, you have the Troubles, which then is about Irish independence or not, right? And people fighting, and yeah. So basically, just from like land distribution, like if we look in American politics, we see how long it actually takes for slavery to sort of, you know, like for people to catch up after slavery. We see a similar dynamic with the Irish having trouble catching up when they're still facing the effects of colonialism. And but it also comes to this idea that when you can look at the worst thing that happens, then it's not a matter of just ending the worst thing that happens. Slavery was not the end of oppression for blacks in America. you have Jim Crow, you have redlining, you have all these very real conspiracies to keep wealth out of the hands of black people. And so with Ireland, you kind of continue to have this conspiracy to keep it so that way Ireland's resources must be served to the British. And so it takes a long time for there to be a recovery from all of this. And that recovery ultimately for Ireland came from independence. Um, let's see. And even now, with Brexit, now Northern Ireland is like, wait a minute, because both nations were in the EU, we could travel back and forth between North and South because you had Catholics who are Irish living in Northern Ireland. And so they were like, well, we can move back and forth. This is fine. The troubles, like, we can kind of have a two-state solution here. But when the UK left the EU, now there's talk of Northern Ireland needing to reunify with the South, because basically now their border is going up. There isn't just free travel between the two, and easy trade and everything like that. So we are still seeing, like, Wolfwalkers is kind of an early look into this history of Ireland, but we're still kind of seeing the ramifications of that history even today. It's like you pull a scam in 1600 to 1650, and it just keeps going. Or the effects of that scam just keep going. And a big part of that is generational wealth. Who has it? Who has control? Who has power? Who inherits power off of generational wealth? And if we look in the United States to go, okay, well, what if without reparations we just sort of go, okay, everything's going to be fair from now on? We can kind of look at Ireland and go, no, that's not going to happen because generational wealth will continue to bias the scales. Let me see. There we go. Okay. And anyway, so the biggest feature of Wolfwalkers, and that's the end of, like, the history aspect. I hope I got it right, because really the easiest to grasp, and I think this is why these myths kind of permeate, is the easiest to grasp is Catholics were up to some shit, and then the Protestants did some shit because fuck the Catholics, and then it's like, that doesn't really work, right? Like, and I think that's why people run with, well, they had two different religions, ha ha ha. And it's dumb. I really hate that. It's like such a very simplistic way of looking at any history. And so I went into the deep end of the history, and I got a lot of headaches trying to figure out who did what and when and how, and then how to summarize it. And so I hope I understood most of it. Anyway, so let's go to artworky boys. Okay, so this is actually a now my computer is lagging a bit. So this is actually an assignment I did last year.
I don't think you can see it.
You can't see it?
Oh, maybe it's just loading for me.
Oh. Okay, you can.
Isaac says
He can see.
The screen, so.
It's not loading for you though.
It's not loading for me, but.
Oh, you know what? I know what it is.
If it's working for everybody else, and I can just look over your shoulder at what you're doing.
Okay, yeah. Let me see. Oh. New. Okay, well, give me like 2 minutes to try to fix. I think I've had problems with screen shares because I think, Katie, I think our internet is just terrible because every time I've tried to help classmates with homework and we've what's it called? We've screen shared. Um, I was never able to get video feed from their desktop, and I think it's whenever it's 1080p feed of the desktop, maybe. Anyway, I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
disconnect from the event stage so that I'm not
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to just like come here, maybe, I don't know.
As long as people can see it.
Okay, so um, anyway, uh, so we had to do this assignment that was to break down the character designs of a movie, right? Of an animated movie, and so we had to break down like particular styles. Sandra Anderson is so I had a hard time really finding out who was responsible for the character design look of this film. Um, Sandra Anderson posted the most about being a character designer on Wolfwalkers. However, Federico Pirovano, his portfolio showed more that his work looks like it was Wolfwalkers for decades. So I kind of credited both of them. Tom Moore is the director of it, so I'm sure he has say in this as well because I believe he is an animator too. Um, so anyway, these are different aspects. Oh, and so then we had to design our own character who would fit in within this world, right? Um, and so we'll go with Maeve first. So, or we can look at just a basic general impression. These two characters are very opposite from each other. This is pointy, a lot of triangular shapes and things like that. Why am I getting like this, like, do not know? It's like, okay. Oh, I get it. It's like I have the eraser tool on, and it's a vector layer, I guess. So, oh, anyway, um, so this is very pointy, very aggressive. She is British, and you know, Maeve is Celtic. She's pagan, and so she's very round, very energetic. You see some penciling in the line, like they allow this like energy of the construction lines to show through with the Wolfwalker characters. My hold on, my tablet's falling off its stand. Okay, and so yeah, so definitely the shapes that you really see here are like roundness and angles. Actually, I should probably go do this part of the lecture if I can find my pen. Here we go. This is not my pen. That's from my Surface Pro. Hold on, I'll be back.
One moment, please. Technical difficulties. You got your pen?
Yeah, I got my pen. Can you use your phone and see if anyone has like any questions or anything I need to respond to?
I can do that.
Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about what's a good pen. I like the G pen. Real G pen's fine. Okay, my computer is lagging like hard. It's a pretty beastly computer, so that's saying something. Anyway, the so no, okay, so In terms of character design, we have three primary shapes. Oh, come on. So in terms of character design, we have three primary shapes. We have the triangle, the square, and the circle. Oh, this is lagging so hard. It's causing all sorts of weird problems. Oh, and my computer is hot. Let's see. Triangle, square, circle. Right? And so most of our associations with these shapes come from what's called shape language and what's called object relations theory. So basically, like, this would remind us of like a mother's breast, the circle. So when we associate it with like, you know, things that are soft, pillows, that which is feminine, but also as a circle. If you see this on a plane, this tends to roll away, or basically roll away. So the circle can be unstable. It can be, but it's also deeply associated with comfort, femininity, feminine power. In Wolfwalkers, it is shown as a combination of instability, but also and feminine power, but also a dynamic. Yeah, dynamicism. Yeah, see. Anyway, there's a dynamic property to it.
Dynamism.
Okay. Anyway, and so it's a
That's Tyson, not me. You don't have to say that.
Okay. Anyway, anyway, there's a dynamic property to it. And also this is fun. Like that's basic. This is fun, right? And laid back. That did not write fun.
Phil?
There we go. Oh my god. The computer is not having fun right now. I should probably have left this in the other room, and because the other room is recording the chat, so I should have just left this where it was. Fun. There we go. Okay.
Yay.
It's, whereas square and angles, this tends to be very rigid. God damn it! How do you spell rigid?
Rigid?
Yeah.
RIGID.
Anyway, so it's rigid. I don't know why I think there's a D in there. It feels like there should be. But this is rigid, but also you put it on a slant, it's quite stable. Same thing with the triangles. So these boys are stable. This is not stable. But, these two ideas tend to go hand in hand.
That's why you're fun.
That's why I'm so fun. And but in terms of object relations theory, like when you're a baby, like you've probably smacked your head against something this shaped or stepped on a jaggedy rock that's, this doesn't look like it's going to be a fun time to step on, right? This could be a problem if you do it wrong, right? And so, because basically the cube is just two triangles. And now you understand the N64 rendering, or also most rendering. Every quad is a try. Anyway, that's only a joke if you already understood what I'm referring to. Basically, I'll go quick. Basically, computer graphics. It's much easier for graphic render. I think some graphic rendering engines only do tries, if not all of them. But quads work a lot better in topology because it's fewer vertices, it's fewer things, but also then the computer can really just read it as that. Um, that's my understanding of it anyway. I'm not like an expert on that. The But anyway, yeah. So a square tends to be much more stable, but it also that's another my bad drawing also led me to this idea that you can also have diamonds, which kind of create both the combination of these two shapes. And there's actually something that I came across on Instagram the other day where they were saying that in terms of character design, I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to maybe turn this off. So in terms of character design, if you were to draw, so baby eyes is also a concept. It's this idea that if the eyes are bigger, then it reminds you of a baby. And so, that looks horrifying. Like babies.
Why would you do this?
So, you might have... Well, that's weird. Anyway, very quick drawing. And so, you have these big pupils, and then you might, this is like one of those, like, this person shouldn't have made a how to draw manga book style. Like, here's how to draw manga. Anyway, but anyway, so you have like this very cutesy big eyes, right? But then if you're going to style anime character, what's it called? Not anime characters. Well, what they were saying is that, like, if you're going to draw character eyes, for Asian character designs, you may want to do like Twilight Sparkle's eyes design is something like this, right? And so you may, and some you might actually like cut here and give it more. This is a horrible design. I mean, this is a horrible drawing. I have a hard time teaching and drawing at the same time.
That's
beautiful. You're beautiful.
Oh.
Anyway, wrong side, sorry. So you might want to cut into the shape of the eye a little bit more, right? This is looking terrible, I'm so sorry.
Are you murdering this baby child?
I'm going to...
Is this a dead child?
I'm going to get rid of this whole baby because that was a bad idea. I'm just going to talk about the
shit. Dead child cat?
Okay, so... Yeah, so basically, like, Twilight Sparkle would have, like... Even though she has baby eyes, she's also Asian coded. So there is, like, a slight, like, olive shape. But what they started happening... Like, so if you have, like, Raya and the Last Dragon, you have a hero character whose eyes are kind of more like this, right? It's kind of closer to what maybe they would do for like a Caucasian eye, right? And then but then you have the villains, and they're using shape language to basically carve into the eye even further. So it's like the more villain a character is, the more they give them like Asian characteristics. Yeah,
that's racist.
Yeah, it is racist. Yeah, and so the problem is that they're trying to educate character designers because, like, if you're going for a non-Asian character, like, because usually how they would design like a villain's eyes, like, I want to say if you look at say like Inuyasha, I think Inuyasha's eyes actually are just like kind of these big eyes, and Rumiko Takahashi is not thinking, anything like how am I depicting Asians, because she's Japanese. She's just like, so like Inuyasha's eye might be something like that, and then Shishomaru's eyes would be, his like evil brother is like this, right? Because she's going with shape language and she's going with like a narrower eye, right? Anyway, so that's something that now like Disney is under fire for, because like the because uh if you want to do shape language, maybe if you're specifically doing like an Asian property and you're an American studio, maybe this is not the place to do it, because there's so many other places in terms of the character's design that you can actually, if you're going to say somebody's a rigid character, you can kind of give them like Jafar style, maybe a torso, like this would be basically like a silhouette of that character, very very rigid arms, and you're trying to make like a villain character, maybe like, why did I draw it like that? Why did it cancel? Okay, I don't know why these two shapes are seen as the same task anyway, but yeah. So maybe eyebrows might be a direction to go. Hat, you know then eyes, this is very, and then maybe the hat might be squared. I don't know, this is not something I thought through ahead of time, but for there's so many other places in costume to actually do this. So anyway, we have our shape language. There is another shape that I'm going to bring up, which our character design teacher taught us, which is sort of the goofy ear. That's also just to be like silly, and that's just something that kind of like a the water balloon shape. He also called it like a breast shape, ball shape. It's just sort of like, it's, for whatever reason, this is just sort of a funny shape, and maybe if we watch Kaiba, then that would come more, because that a lot of the character design in Kaiba uses that shape. Anyway, so back to this. The So now we see the shape language coming into play. We have angular, sharp, danger, and then soft, fun, dynamic in these characters.
Goofy ear again, and her entire hair.
Oh yeah, her entire hair is that goofy ear. So what I had to do is I had to take just find resources of the designs and then try to deconstruct them. And so starting with Maeva, she seems kind of like the icon for the children's sizes. So it's like, she's 3 heads tall. So the basically, give me one of these. I mean, I think maybe we all know this, but I'm going to cover it. So basically, I didn't know Clip Studio Paint remembers the sizes from the last time you used this in the document. Okay, anyway. So the head size is a unit of measure. And that's how you keep track of your proportions. So this is... that's really 3.5. Which then would put it, so anyway, correcting my own homework. I was wrong. But anyway, so I don't actually know why she's shorter. I guess they just sort of used this Photoshop tool and just transformed her tiny. Just did one of these. But anyway, nothing was selected there. So I like Clip Studio Paint because it didn't actually get mad at me saying you didn't actually select any data. It just was like, yeah, I'll do it. You want me to manipulate nothing? That's fine. Anyway, so this is another element, the shapes within shapes. This allows you to have sort of multiple comments on who the character is at one time. So basically, you have someone who, like, you have this square shape saying that she's stable. You have this triangle shape saying that she's hostile and aggressive. And at least when she's wearing the hunter outfit, her wardrobe changes as time goes on and as her psychological state changes. So, here she's like, let's kill all the wolves. Here she's like, oh no, like, she's more identifying with the wolves. And then here she's, you know, she's stable, like, but also we're seeing maybe she's lacking in power here, and she's trying to get that power, but she's not quite so stable, right? Because if we draw a line down here, that shape is teetering back and forth. So we get her divided between her allegiances when she's wearing this outfit. And then here she's more stable. She's mindful of where her allegiances belong, and and the roundedness here tells us that her allegiances belong with Maeve. So that's how you get your character design telling part of your story. Also, because there's more to design than just the thoughts of the character, and the head design definitely does reflect what the character is thinking. But we also have these things like repeating elements here. So we have this stable with a potential for roundedness, right? But she's presenting herself more as angular. Everything about her costume is saying, I'm here to kill the Irish. But these small elements suggest she is capable of identifying with the Irish. This circle in her hair is given, or the flower is given to her by her father, which then gives her which we're kind of getting this idea that her father is, because of who her father is, she has learned to be capable of identifying with the wolves and with the Irish. A lot of her personality is based on what she has gotten from her father. They definitely like repeating elements. From a Freudian interpretation, a downward V tends to be a yonic symbol. Upward V tends to be a phallic symbol. Wolfwalkers doesn't really strike me as too Freudian of a work, other than this, wanting to kill the Irish is a phallic symbol, and then here and this is definitely a film about feminine power. The character design of the mother is definitely of Maeve's mother is definitely very yonic heavy. In terms of, it's very circular, it's very, very much like raw feminine power. And then you have here the Robin's father's character design, and that's very masculine. Actually, I don't think that's not her father. That's Lord Protector. Sorry, but anyway, he is very. Wait, I don't know. This also might be early designs too, because I had to get production resources rather than, because I didn't have the movie, because it didn't exist outside of Apple Plus at the time. yeah, it was basically so I anyway. So here are some of my designs. We can laugh at how busted they are. I was really sick with COVID and really struggling to keep up, but I kind of found
Peridot from Steven
yeah. She definitely looked like Peridot. I was very much just trying to survive the assignment. I'm not gonna say I was doing great, but the more I did it, I mean, this is kind of the wonder of repetition in character design, is that the more you bullshit, the more you eventually end up with something that starts to not be deniable. And then, still shapes within shapes. You can take off the wardrobe, things like that. Oh, I forgot to talk about some of the design here. So they definitely wanted a flat style to it. So what's interesting about it is, so there's something called volumetric clothing. And volumetric clothing is basically, does the clothing and design imply a that something is three-dimensional? And they intentionally choose a lot of flat shapes, really focusing more on shape throughout the design. Anyway, this is just me trying to recreate a lot of what seems important. Yeah, wardrobe, like with Fully Cooley tended to go costumes between episodes and how the or days within the story to showcase what their role was for the period. Whereas this Wolfwalkers really likes removable aspects of clothing, so that way, if she takes off her hood, that shows a change of paradigm. So pay attention to that.
Chris is saying in the chat, interesting that capes and stuff do this thing of giving a very square shape to the silhouette, where the character underneath might be angular and triangular. The cape silhouette makes it look square.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's part of the shapes within shapes logic. Like that just shows absolutely getting the point. So yeah. I'm helping.
You're helping.
Yeah. Let me see. Where did my notes go? Sorry. Okay, so we're a little early in terms of how long my lectures can go. Let's see. So let's talk. Let me see how long. When it gets to like 4:30, I'm just gonna stop because I don't know how much this is absolutely necessary. But I think if I talk about this now, then I don't necessarily have to pause the movie as we're watching. Though I may do it if there's something I want to point out. Let's see. So we talked about shape language. We talked about design. Okay, so very quick thing. We're going to talk about perspective. Perspective is a much... it's not writing words. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to do what I want you, computer. Anyway, you're on fire because you're recording this. Anyway, okay, so basically perspective, as the word says, gives you the perspective of who is looking at something. And so we'll talk about how perspective is used to make shapes first. So basic perspective. I'm going to draw this real shitty because the computer is not going very well. Anyway, so we have the horizon line, right? And as my perspective teacher would say, the horizon line is your God. And because the horizon line tells you how tall or how high up the viewer is. So where the viewer is looking at it, so let's say this is eyeball. The horizon line is here. The eyeball cannot be here. And have the horizon line, the horizon line, the horizon line be up here, right? And so where the horizon line is placed affects how, makes a comment about whose perspective you're looking at. So perspective becomes something that is hyper literal and also kind of figurative, and it's amazing as a word for a concept. So now, if we're going to build a shape, right? Let's say we're going to build this, or have... Hold on, my thing is lagging, and it's hard for me to tell where my cursor is. Okay. So if we're going to have a shape, right? If this shape... So this is where our eye is. If we're going to have a square, right? Where there will be a vanishing point. And so let's say it's 1 point perspective. The vanishing point will then create this cube. Now this cube looks small, it looks non-threatening because it's so beneath us, right? Because we're all the way up here and it's down here. But now if we have a cube that is, now the floor would be along with that. Now if we have a cube that's like this, then that tells us where we're at. And if this is, say, something like a kitchen counter, then that tells us we are like a child. Let's say this is like an Amazon box, and then, you know, this is like the kitchen cabinet. And so then that tells us that that's way too small of a cabinet. Anyway, that tells us sort of our relative status to the objects that are in the scene, right? And then of course, if there's something that's like a building, you know, it's going to be way huge. And so where, damn it. Okay. So where that horizon line affects what we're doing, or whose perspective we're in, and who. Come on. Okay. Whose perspective we're in, and you know, what matters in the scene. So in Wolfwalkers, they have a scene where she's running through the town, and her eye level is she's right here, her eye level is here, and so then we have like these stands that are just above her, and we have these other people, you know, like these adults who are then, this is like their chest, this is right. So then we have people who are up here, and so we see that, you know, we are in her perspective because the horizon line is going through her eye line, right? And then there's another scene that then comes up, and we're looking down on her, right? So we're looking down on her, which then means our horizon line is up here, which means we are seeing things from an adult's perspective. This is not going very well. 2-point, 1-point, and 3-point perspective, the difference between them is not very important to us. But where the placement of the horizon line is, that is important to us because it tells us who's talking, who's not. So another thing we need to talk about is mixed perspective, which is a big part of this. So if the horizon line is down low, right, and we're looking at a table, let's do this one in 2-point perspective. How about that, just for fun? And if anyone's interested, I can explain what the difference is between the different perspectives, but if people are like, get on with it, then we don't have to. So I'm doing what's called box perspective, which is basically where you treat everything like it's a box. And then, come on, please. Please, please. Can I have my brush back? Can I have, okay, there we go. Thank you. All right, so now this is how, let's see. I'm just going to draw through. Wait, that's not right. Okay, so then this will be the table. And so since we're from a child's perspective here, or like a baby's perspective, we're seeing all the legs of the table. We're seeing what's under the table. And now maybe there's like a glass above. We'll see barely the glass, but we can't see the food. We can't see anything else in there, right? Now, there's something called mixed perspective, or I'm going to call it mixed perspective because I could not find the term for this, except, I've seen it in a perspective book where they said, it's not wrong, it's just not right. Anyway, it's just not mechanical perspective, right? And so now if we're going to look at the top of the table, we'll have the horizon line on top here, right? So we're really high up. That might even be too high up. That would be like we're on a second story from this table. But anyway, so um, so with the legs, I'm just deciding a length of 1, and then if I decide a length of 1, the rest of them have to follow a certain set of rules. So this leg disappeared, right? And now we're seeing the top of the glass. We're seeing, a plate. We're seeing food, etc. I should have done this in 1 point perspective, but anyway. Now, this table here has 3 legs. But what you'll see is because this one is hidden. I mean, we know, as adults, we know that there's a leg that would be right here, right? But one thing that happens with kids is kids will oftentimes do like this mixed perspective, and you see it with children. You also see it with like medieval art. Medieval art, you might see like, there will be like a monk here, and then you have the plate, the food, or like the drink, right? And then you have table legs like this, right? Children would also do the same thing. Like, it's like, draw dinner. They'll be like, okay, here's the leg of the table, but there's 4 of the legs, so you gotta do them like this, and then, but then there's the top of the table, and then, and then we have the food here, and then we have the cup, and, and so that's how kids will do it, right? And that's actually just a mix of these other perspectives that we used, because it's like, it's deciding, that just became a mess. It's deciding I don't want to lose anything because this is a zero-sum game, or it's not a zero-sum game, but there's costs here. If you do one perspective, you lose this leg in the image. If you do this wrong one. If you do this other perspective, you lose the food. And so you have to choose your subject matter, and you have to choose your perspective. And so kids don't want to lose any of it. So then they do something closer to this, where they get everything they want. So Wolfwalkers kind of does this, where in the town, they represent the town. So the town should actually just be this giant wall, right? And even if they're on a hill, they might just see peeking over the town and see some of the towers and some of the homes and things like that. In Wolfwalkers, they actually do something more like this, because we're looking at a child's perspective. So they'll actually have the town laid out perfectly, like vertically, and then have like little houses like this. And I believe that's just showcasing that it's a child's perspective. It also makes like a great design. Let me see what else. Okay, so guiding the lines, or guiding the eye, is another thing I'll talk about. We've gone over it a little bit in the past, which is, you have this whole frame, and you have to create a focal point for what people are looking at. If you kind of create something like this, since this is such a small element, the eye is going to go here. And if you put something here, the eye is still just going to go here to the biggest thing. If you put something here, the eye is still going to go here. But if you do something like this, it's very hard for the eye to decide what to bias. If you do something like this, then it's hard to really decide what the focal point is, because everything is equidistant. Everything is the same. So the frame is not creating anything that particularly biases your attention. Wolfwalkers does have a shot. You know, dividing the frame in the middle is not necessarily the worst thing you can do. But they do have a shot where it's in the middle, and you have the dad who is on one side. And this is supposed to represent the barrier, the schism that's going to happen between the father and son, or father and daughter. And so then you have the daughter here who's pleading to go with the dad. And the dad is like, you need to fucking stop and just follow the rules because you're going to get in trouble. And she's like, but I can kill all the Irish. And she's, and by that I mean wolves. and then he's like, no, I'm gonna do it, because she's like, I'm very British, I can go. And he's like, no, I don't be British right now. And so but basically the way,
somebody get a screenshot of this is beautiful.
So anyway, the thing is that the way that they're going to draw your eye in this is whoever is talking, because movement is going to be a high priority thing that draws our eye. No matter all the other elements, if something is moving, you're going to be looking at the thing that's moving. However, I keep referencing this, and I need to find it, but it's not necessarily the case. There is a frame. There is a shot in what's that one? It's like clothes fighting anime, Kill la Kill.
Oh.
Yeah. So in Kill la Kill, they have this shot, right? It's not quite those proportions. They have something that's like, what is it? It's like, no, it's something like this, right? And the characters are over here, or they're not that big in the frame, but they're over here, and they're going up a hill, and then they put two dogs, like trigger animation, put two dogs having sex right here, and they knew that your eye would be biased over here, and that this whole area would be basically blind to you as the audience. And so they put in two dogs having sex, knowing that basically, unless you have a sharp eye or you're studying it for composition or what have you, that you will not see the dogs having sex. And almost everyone I talk to who's seen Kill la Kill has never noticed the dogs having sex.
Isaac says, I feel like I remember seeing that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, then you have a very sharp eye, because they were directly trying to move you over here.
I didn't see it until like the third time watching the anime.
I paused it and said, oh my god, there's dogs having sex. And you were like, what? That's just you seeing what you want to see.
That was also the third time I saw the anime.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. So leading lines is another thing. If we look back at the perspective, if we have, something that we actually want to, so let's say we divide this out, right? Some frame here. Maybe it's like a shadow. Maybe this is the only thing that's illuminated, and there's a light here, and so everything here is in shadow. And so and that is a good way to remove things from the frame, because you have a contrast of light and shadow. And so now you may have the dog or whatever. So whatever thing you're looking at. And so then the lines, actually, I'm stupid. The vanishing point is going to be where these things vanish to. So now we have the dog or whatever that is the point of the scene. So now these lines are being used to point to the subject matter. So leading lines is another thing that you can use. Another thing that differentiates too is there's a lot of things that create like a there's like a hierarchy of things you can use. So if you have, let's say, and then that's a bad idea. Okay, so let's say we have a go with just a snowman, a red snowman. It's end of Evangelion. Deleted scene. The only thing Asuka and Shinji can do is make a Fanta snowman. And so, anyway, if something is, hi Raja. So if something is smaller in a scene, it has less status. There's like a duplicate here, right? No, I think I'm thinking of Blender. All the softwares just start to blend together, like Blender. What's going on? Oh, here we go.
Hello, Raja.
I haven't been drawing this year, so. So the bigger element is going to be the more dominant element in the scene, right? It's going to show that it has more status. However, what you can also do sometimes is have a character, even though they're smaller, rise up in the scene, and then they end up getting more power in the scene and more status. You really have to deconstruct the scene to know what's specifically happening. But usually size biasing decides whether they have status, and where the horizon line in this. Come on, stop it. Okay, I need to. So I'm not a great artist, so I have trouble with teaching and drawing. Anyway, so if the horizon line goes through there, we know that we are in this person's perspective. And so the emotions of the scene and even maybe how this character is acting comes from this person's perspective of how we're seeing it. If it's from here, then we may see this person as having more status, but being more imposing. But we're looking at this character here because their facial expressions are important to our empathy. And so maybe this could be a mix of balance, right? Maybe this person is going more aggressively, however this person has the upper hand. We just haven't maybe the dramatic irony tells us this character has the upper hand, even though this character is being the biggest bully in the scene. Let me see. Another biasing thing. This is more if something is out of focus. Hopefully this doesn't like destroy it. Something that's out of focus is going to catch our attention less than the thing that is in focus. except maybe right now because it looks weird as hell. But what's going on here? Okay. Another problem with Clip Studio Paint is that there's so many tools that getting back to your correct tool causes you need to like cycle through a list of tools.
It's like Animal Crossing.
Yeah, it's basically like Animal Crossing, the same UI issues. So your focus is going to be what's in focus, what's in light, also what has more detail, which kind of is like the same thing because this is not in detail. What's interesting with Wolfwalkers is that they have very detailed backgrounds, and normally that kind of goes in the opposition of this rule that detail draws attention. So then how are you getting the focus? Well, the biggest thing is movement will always win. Whatever is moving is always going to grab the most attention. But also they use other compositional things to get what they want, or to get your eye looking at where it's supposed to go. Now let's look at this because my self-esteem is dropping, and so I want something that at least was reasonably drawn. Let me see.
The snowmen were reasonably drawn. The LCL snowman.
LCL snowman. Ah, damn it! I did these all on the same layer. Anyway, I'll ruin the other table drawing. Wait, where is it? Oh, no, okay, that was layered. Oh, it's the one that's selected. Okay. Another thing, again, and this is the last thing, I kind of haphazardly went through my notes, but we covered everything. The other thing is a frame within a frame. Frames within a frame works really well at isolating where we're supposed to be looking. Perhaps the most famous frame within a frame is James Bond and the opening theme, where you're seeing James Bond through the perspective of a gun barrel, and then he shoots the gun barrel and then it bleeds. And I don't is the gunman bleeding so much that it's
he bleeds out of
filling the blood or over the blood, like I don't know, but everything works if you don't pay attention to it, and everything falls apart if you pay too much attention to it. But anyways, a frame within a frame will always is a good way to do it. Wolfwalkers does this cool technique where actually I'll go get a different. Wolfwalkers does this cool technique where your focal point is someone here, and then they isolate it, right? But then, and they isolate it within a frame, but then what they do is they pan the whole thing to the right, and then that frame come on, stop lagging. No, give me the tool I want, please. Okay. And so then this frame that is constructed here moves to the side, but more space is created. And so now your focal point is moving off of here, because now the dynamics of the frame have changed, and now you have, another character enter from the left, and so they're like, I'm a puppy, and
That's not how I remember the James Bond intro.
Yeah. Oh, that was not the James Bond intro. I'm actually thinking of a shot from Wolfwalkers, but because that's a circle. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So Wolfwalkers does this cool thing, and I think that's everything. I probably should. It probably would have been a little more interesting if I actually did stop the movie and go back, and I may still do that. I'm gonna. I feel like maybe right now I'm really testing everybody's patience with me. I'm gonna switch back to camera.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You're
anyway.
not testing my patience.
Anyway.
You're testing Raj's patience.
Well, I do know that the drawing theory and the character design theory is not everybody's favorite, but it is story. It breaking down the frame, and so there is that. Anyway, let's see. And I guess that's it. I guess we'll start the movie now.
Are we running out of time?
Let's see. Okay, Discord is getting my thing, even though the recording is not. I'm having trouble. I did not test the PS3 connection, so I'm going to have to set that up right now. I don't know why it's not. It was working earlier. Actually, I did test it. I don't know what's... That can't be working if that is working, so